If you're considering a career in medicine, this show is for you. I'm going to be talking to a variety of healthcare professionals who are going to share the reality of what it takes to have a successful career in medicine. The good, the bad, the inspiring, the funny. My name is Michelle Neske. I'm a physician assistant and your host, about to bring you Beyond the Scope. If you've done research into applying to physician assistant school, you know how crazy it is with all the different requirements and programs out there, and how do you choose which one is best for you? Well, luckily, two of my friends and PAs created an amazing platform that you can do this all in one place called My PA Box. Research schools by state, track your hours, look up all the requirements, literally in one spot at mypabox.com. You can also use their PA school match to enter in all your demographic information, your GPA, whether or not you took the GRE or PA CAT, and filter for schools that would be the best fit for you. You guys, this has been game changing for pre-PAs, and I use it all the time with my clients. You can go ahead and get a 1-year subscription. And because you're listening to this podcast, if you use Posh PA 15, you can get 15% off your 1-year subscription. You will not regret this. If you are a pre-PA, it will sort things out so much for you and just make it easier to do the research on the programs that are the best fit for you. So check them out, mypabox.com. Okay, so you guys, today I am here with Chrissy Massaro. She is a certified registered nurse anesthetist and CRNA, and she is originally from Long Island, but currently lives and works in Philadelphia, and she's been a CRNA since 2017, right?
Yeah,
2017. And I'm really excited to have her because this is a field that not many people know about. We work with CRNAs at my hospital, but I think it's a great opportunity to sort of talk to you a little bit about how you found this career and, you know, what you do day to day and how you like it. So tell me how you kind of got started, even going into healthcare.
Wow, that's such a great question. I guess, what really first exposed me to healthcare was growing up. I had an older sister with Turner syndrome, which is, a genetic
chromosomal abnormality. Yeah. Yeah.
Chromosomal abnormality that it's more rare. I think there's only 70,000 women with Turner syndrome in the US today, currently. So essentially, it comes with a plethora of potential health conditions. And my sister had a heart defect that she was born with that is sometimes associated with Turner syndrome. So, ever since I can remember being alive, we've always had a series of, doctor's appointments, seeing her echoes every year. We'd have to go to a cardiologist, and I would be in the room and watch the ultrasound.
Yeah.
Interesting to get to watch ultrasounds as a kid growing up. My parents used to have to give her growth hormone injections every night. So watching my mom mix up, the saline with the powder and inject. It's just I always thought healthcare was interesting since then. So
were they in the healthcare field or no?
No, my parents, neither of them are in the healthcare field.
Okay.
So they had to kind of learn everything from
I was going to say, learning all that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no internet then. So
yeah.
I had to buy medical textbooks and research and go to the library and use, the filing card system.
The card catalog. Yeah.
I don't think I've touched one of those since elementary school.
Exactly.
But, so I guess that's kind of how I got interested in healthcare in the first place. But I, like many people who aren't sure of their career, you think about becoming a doctor, you think about becoming a nurse. I have a cousin who's a PA. She's really encouraging me to go to PA school.
Sure.
So it was really hard to kind of decide. I had never heard of a nurse anesthetist at this point. And then I stumbled along anesthesia when I studied abroad in Mexico as an undergrad.
Oh.
I was actually a pre-med major. I was doing a psychology. Psychology was my main major. I did a minor in biology and Spanish, took all my pre-med courses, and I studied abroad in Mexico to learn my Spanish courses. And there was a pre-med program down there.
Okay.
So I was shadowing doctors in this public hospital. And I was supposed to rotate to 4 hospitals, and some of my rotations fell through because of paperwork.
Oh
So
God.
this anesthesiologist sort of took me under her wing, and she just adopted me for the rest of the semester.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I thought it was gonna be so boring. I was like, oh, I can't believe I have to shadow an anesthesiologist. You're watching people sleep. Oh, it's gonna be so lame. No, it was amazing. I loved it. It was a public women's hospital, so
Yeah.
she just had this amazing role where she was there for the C-sections. She was doing the epidurals for women in labor,
Mm-hmm.
women who were getting oncologic surgeries, or whatever they needed.
Yeah.
She was there for them, and they were nervous, and she held their hand, and they felt better. They trusted her. She was a wizard. So
Yeah.
that got me interested in anesthesia.
Yeah.
So I went back to the U.S. I still wasn't sure what to do, so I became a nurse's aide in a surgery center to get
Yeah.
patient experience hours while I finished my degree. And that's where I met nurse anesthetists.
Okay.
So
Cool.
the CRNAs staffed all the ORs there. There was one physician anesthesiologist who would be, out kind of available for emergencies and do
Mm-hmm.
pre-op assessments. And, between him and all the nurse anesthetists, they all really encouraged me to become a CRNA. And I got to
Yeah.
shadow them, and it just kind of happened.
I was going to say, did you shadow, different professions? Because some people ask me too, like, how did you decide PA? I mean, I shadowed a doctor, I shadowed a PA, you just kind of check it out, right? The best way to know is to kind of go and see for yourself.
The only problem with that is there's
Mhm.
a huge barrier to shadowing as a high school
Yes.
student, especially. I think it's a little bit easier in college, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the times hospitals don't want to give you permission to,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, come in contact with patients
Yeah.
without certain vaccine clearances and
Yeah, I
background.
completely agree. I have like two ends of the spectrum with my with my clients. It's either they have 100 shadowing hours or they can't find anybody to shadow. And I know even just by me having to have somebody to shadow, it's paperwork and they can only come for 3 days. So, it's very limited in some areas, more so, and especially now with the pandemic, there is just nothing
It's all on hold.
going on. So, just talking to people um, and seeing if it's right for you is probably the best thing you can do at this point.
It's so tough. I will say the one good thing is if you're going to go into a healthcare field
Mhm.
like PA or physician, at least you can, it's all the same prerequisite requirements.
Right.
And people who live in states where there's anesthesiology assistants, it's a similar profession to
Hmm.
RNA. It's not quite the same, but they have the same prerequisites that a PA would have.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for if you're trying to choose between CRNA and something like physician or PA, the difference would be you'd have to go to nursing school. So
Right.
it's
I was going to ask you that. So you have to switch. So you switched your major?
so I finished my major
You
actually.
finished. Okay.
So I graduated with a degree in psychology,
Okay.
and I did a second degree, 1 year accelerated BSN program. So
Okay.
like 12 months of like nursing school,
Hmm.
fast forward. And
Yeah.
I graduated and got a job right in the ICU, which was very lucky.
So you basically, so what are the ways that you can become a CRNA? Is that the traditional way, or do most people go to nursing school and then beyond, or do they do it more similar to you?
So you have to, in order to become a nurse anesthetist, you absolutely have to have your Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Okay.
And technically, you have to have at least 1 year of critical care ICU nursing experience. But most schools won't accept less than 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Average nurse anesthetist really has more like 3 to 5 years. It's kind of a newer phenomenon for
Hmm.
nurses to go back earlier than that. It's really, it takes a long time to become an expert in critical care, and you are taking your critical care expertise and bringing that into your anesthesia training. That's kind of
Okay.
like the foundation of what allows us to practice independently in so many states and in the U.S. military. So, it is really important to have very high quality intensive care experience. And I always tell people, don't rush past it. 2 years
Yeah.
is probably enough for most people if you're in a high acuity ICU with a lot of autonomy.
Hmm.
But if you're in like a community hospital, or, if maybe just a smaller facility, you might need a little more time.
Okay. So you get your RN and then you work in an ICU,
Yep.
and then what then do you do to become a CRNA?
So it depends on the school.
Okay.
For some schools, that might be all you need to apply, just your
Okay.
experience. A lot of schools require you to become a certified critical care registered nurse, which it's an additional exam you can take. And it
Yeah.
essentially just proves that you're an expert in your field. So
Okay.
you have to have a minimum number of hours of nursing experience to be eligible for the exam.
Mm-hmm.
It's roughly equivalent to a year of full-time nursing. So you study for that, you become certified.
Yeah.
The other exam that's very common is the GRE. Most
Hmm.
schools want you to take the GRE.
Okay.
Some schools will allow you to skip that if your GPA was high enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen on a lot of schools, they'll say, oh, if your GPA is, above 3.5, you don't have to take it, or
Okay.
whatever their cutoff is.
Okay.
It's just dependent on this program that you choose.
Okay. And so how long is the CRNA program?
They're all typically 27 to 36 months long.
Okay.
Up until recently, they were all Masters of Science in Nursing programs, but now they're all transitioning to a doctorate, and they
Oh,
will
wow.
be a doctorate by 2022. Some
Wow.
programs have actually switched over since I graduated.
Wow.
So just in the last 3 years, I'd say probably about half the programs are already doctorate programs.
Wow. Okay.
They were 27 months and now they're 36 months.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few programs that will let you take your master's classes up front before you start the full-time program.
Yeah.
Your more generic classes like uh, pharmacology and
Sure.
technology, they'll let you take those while you're working as a nurse.
Okay.
And then the anesthesia portion and doctorate is still 27 months for those programs.
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting because a lot of the allied health professions are moving towards doctorate now. So, PT, OT, CRNA, NP. And so, one of the questions I get asked a lot too, is that going to happen for PA, Doctor of Clinical Science? I mean, I think at some point there are some programs now for people that already have their master's, like me, to go on and get a doctorate of clinical science or something like that. And then we're starting to see these programs kind of popping up, entry level PA programs too,
Wow,
doing
already.
doctorates. It's crazy. I mean, are
Big professions
so
just
are
transition
you,
to a master's.
so you have a master's.
Yeah,
So would you go back and get a doctorate, do you think?
I don't have to. Like
Yeah.
my grandfather did. I am thinking about doing it. There's a couple options in nursing. You can get the PhD. You
Mm-hmm.
can get an educational doctorate in EDD,
Yeah.
and do your doctorate of nursing practice or DNP. Um, there's a lot of different options. I currently am leaning towards possibly the PhD because I'd like to do more clinical research if I do
Okay.
decide to move forward with my doctorate.
Yeah.
Um, but I really feel like I don't want to commit until I have a research subject that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, I've thought about this too. Right now for PAs, you can get a PhD or you can do sort of a doctorate for educational purposes or clinical science. For me, unless I'm going to be a professor or, you know, be a PhD and have a research subject that I'm interested in, to just be in clinical practice, I don't think the doctorate adds that much.
Totally agree. For us, at least, I don't think it makes a difference, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that will change in the future. I've been starting to see some, doctorate programs for PAs that have different focuses that I might be more interested in. But currently, I'm like, I've definitely tossed it around, but I can't commit either to it at this point.
Yeah, it's tough, especially since it's, like you said, likely not going to change your day to day practice.
Right.
It's the same for me. I do see one benefit being, I think students who finish the DNP
Hmm.
are more likely to get involved in research
Yeah.
or leadership.
Hmm.
I think it's just more of a focus in their
Right.
program. And I think it's beneficial to have advanced practice nurses take on those roles in the
Oh,
healthcare
yes.
system. So that's like the one huge upside to it. But for someone who's been practicing for a long time, who doesn't necessarily want to do that,
Right.
that
Right. I mean, I think definitely, for professional development for specific areas, I think it's super helpful. And there are definitely good opportunities. And it's nice that there are opportunities out there if you want to do that. And so, okay, so tell us then, you finish your CRNA program. Do you have to take a board exam?
you have to take a boards exam. Yep.
Yes. And then you basically go into practice,
Go into
right?
practice. That's it.
So tell us what your day to day is like.
So I work in a large healthcare system. So I give anesthesia at a ton of different locations. So
Okay.
my days are never the same. If I'm in the main OR, there's a bunch of different kinds of surgeries that we may or may not give anesthesia for.
Hmm.
I mean, we are giving anesthesia for all of them, unless you're on a specialty team like cardiac. Like we have a
Okay.
decent sized cardiac program at my hospital, and only a few CRNAs are on the cardiac team, just because they want the same people in those
Oh
rooms all
yeah.
the time because it's so
Yeah.
specialized. But otherwise, we do anesthesia for everything else. So we're also in the electrophysiology lab where they ablate, inappropriate heart rhythms.
Yeah.
The interventional radiology suite where we'll treat people with strokes and put stents and aneurysms in their brains. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Where else are we? Right now, we're not in labor and delivery yet.
Okay.
There is talk of us going there soon.
Okay.
So right now, we have physician residents we're covering the labor and
Okay.
delivery. But
So how does that work? Speaking about that. So like you basically get assigned to a case
yep.
and you are going, so is there an anesthesiologist around or no? You are just doing the anesthesia start to finish. How does it work?
So it totally depends on where you work. It depends
Okay.
on the state you're in. It depends on your specific hospital. There are a lot of CRNAs who work totally independently. No anesthesiologist in the practice at all. Like in rural hospitals, usually
Yeah.
like a group of 2 or 4 CRNAs who just cover that hospital all the time, all year long.
Right.
But where I live in Philadelphia, it's a major academic center, like we said earlier. So we work in an anesthesia care team model. So I have a physician anesthesiologist that I'll work with for that day. They will cover anywhere from 2 to 4 operating rooms at a time.
Okay.
And so they'll, meet the same patient in pre-op. We both speak with the patient, review their
Hmm.
history. They come in with me for induction of anesthesia, meaning
Okay.
we put the patient to sleep. And then once the patient is asleep and we're settled, they will leave and move on to their next room, and they're available by phone if I need them at all. So um,
Yeah.
it's actually kind of nice because I feel like you have the backup safety net of a
Yeah.
set of hands if anything's going on, which
Sure.
for really sick patients or really big complicated cases, I like
Hmm.
having that extra person there.
Yeah.
But I think that it's great that CRNAs can also do it independently as well. I think
Yeah.
either is appropriate based on your comfort level and level of training.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know, I think it's important to say again, like when you said when you were observing the physician in Mexico, it's not just like give the patient something to go to sleep.
Right.
It's a lot of other procedures involved, like epidurals, like probably more some, local anesthesia or MAC or whatever it is. It's not just, intubate the patient, okay, they're ready, put them to sleep. There's a lot of monitoring that goes on during that time. And there's a lot, it's very procedure based.
Exactly. And it's not even just procedure based, it's really critical thinking.
Yeah.
I were to take out your gallbladder right now,
Hmm.
you would want to be asleep for it. You wouldn't
Yes.
feel anything. You wouldn't want to get nauseous afterwards. If someone
Hmm.
accidentally cut a major vessel and caused a bleed, you'd want someone to give you blood back and save your.
Yeah.
So, who is doing all the things so the surgeon can do their work? It's your anesthesia provider.
Right.
So, to answer the original question, a typical day, it just varies based on the kind of
Yeah.
anesthetic we're giving. Like you said, it's not always general anesthesia. A lot of the times it is. And that's, what most people think of the
Right.
tube going off to sleep. But there is conscious sedation, which is really more of an art. You really have to fine tune the
Yeah.
amount of drug that you're giving the patient based on the surgeon and what they're doing to the body and
Sure.
the patient's airway and their age and their comorbidities. And it's
Right.
really like a balancing act. So
Yeah.
keeping them asleep and still, but also breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard work.
It's actually very hard work and like scary to me. You know what I mean?
It can be scary.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit. So your husband?
Yes.
Okay. So he's also a nurse, but not you guys met in the ICU?
Yeah, we met in the ICU. He's a registered nurse. He now works in interventional radiology.
Nice. Okay. And so, how did you guys sort of, so a question I get asked a lot, and I talked on some of my other podcasts about this is when you have two people, working in healthcare, how do you balance your schedules?
I don't know. I don't think we do.
We don't. Yeah.
No, it's a joke.
I'm kidding.
It was really tough when I was in anesthesia school because
Yeah.
Michael was still working the ICU. So he had a lot of night shifts, weekend, holiday call, and then I was just constantly in the operating room as a nurse anesthesia student. You
Yeah.
are basically working full-time hours plus your courses and preparing for cases. It's just
Hmm.
time consuming. So that was really tough. I think I saw him like once or twice a week,
Yeah.
2 years.
Jeez.
And he just tolerated it.
He just went with it.
He was like, "Oh, this is an investment."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But now he was working mostly 8-hour shifts, which is nice. So
Yeah.
he comes home at like 3:30.
Hmm.
I work 3 long days typically most weeks.
Okay.
So I'll get home at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night usually,
Hmm.
but it's only 3 days. So on my
Yeah.
days off, I get to see him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
just
what do you like to do on your days off?
I cook.
Nice.
My big thing. In fact,
Yeah.
I got into Instagram and TikTok to share my vegan recipes. And then somehow it turned into an anesthesia account. I don't really know.
That's awesome.
Nobody wants my recipes.
So Chrissy has a big following on TikTok, and she showed up on my For You page, and I followed her for a number of reasons. One, she sort of sheds light on other medical professions that are not just doctor, nurse, standard ones people hear about. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Like all these different professions. And that's why I got on there was, I got on there I didn't see anyone like me, like any PAs or anything. So I was like, well, this is a younger demographic. And, I think people really need to know about this profession. And if they're thinking about going into it, then what are some tips to kind of help them and also, have a little fun at the same time.
Yeah.
But what do you feel, do you feel that being on a social media platform has allowed you to sort of, I know you didn't start off that way, but sort of connect with people that want to be CRNAs in the future, or they have questions and all of that?
Definitely. I'm constantly getting, not only are people commenting on my videos,
Hmm.
questions about becoming a CRNA, but also a lot of direct messages. I leave that open to the public on TikTok. I leave my Instagram DMs open as well. So people can contact me through there. And every day I get probably about 10 messages on each platform. So
Yeah.
like 20 messages a day from people,
Hmm.
which I try to, get through as many as I can.
Yes, it's hard.
But I'm happy to do it because I didn't have anyone like that. I didn't
Yeah.
have my parents are not in medicine.
Hmm.
Even though I have a cousin who's a PA, we're not very close.
Hmm.
I have an aunt who's a nurse, but she's not really familiar with this world. I
Yeah.
feel like I've kind of had to figure it out on my own, and you can only learn so much through Google.
Yes.
You really just need a human to give you that insight and explain the difference and what it actually looks like day to day. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that for other people because I think it was really confusing and tough.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% like on the same page. Nobody in my family in medicine, no idea. I was kind of just like putting it together back when the internet wasn't even that big. We'd dial up. Like, I'm like, what? And, trying to figure out what I needed to do and just like, like and so just, you're right. You can Google over and over and over and read so many different things, but sometimes just to talk to someone makes the biggest difference. And so I think that's been great. What do you sort of see yourself doing with these platforms at some point?
I think about that all the time, and
Yeah.
just this whole thing it was so unexpected for me that
Hmm.
I don't think I had a vision originally. I didn't really expect it to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to think like, well, how do I use my powers for good?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's just I do kind of want to continue with this theme of helping people figure out
Hmm.
what they want to do with their life. I feel like I was by not having someone to guide me,
Hmm.
it was a huge disadvantage to have to go back for a second degree in nursing
Hmm.
financially and time wise.
Yeah.
Time wise, okay, it was only a year difference, right?
Right.
Financially, it was huge. That
Yes.
that doubled my student loan debt before
Oh,
grad school.
yes.
doubled, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge. And, I originally planned to work longer as a nurse
Mm-hmm.
and pay off all my debt and save a lot of money for nurse anesthesia school. But the programs all have really long wait lists. A lot of them
Oh,
have like 2-year wait lists. You'll interview, you'll get in, and then you don't actually start your program for another 1 to 2 years.
wow. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I was like, oh, I should apply early because by then I'll be an ICU
Yeah.
for 5 years. Like that's perfect. Like, and I had my
Goodness.
budget planned out, and this one will be paid off. And then I surprised the University of Pennsylvania called me. They had a last minute dropout spot. They're like, can you start next month?
Oh my God.
Tomorrow. I was like, what? So, my 5-year plan became an 18-month plan.
Yeah.
And then I had all that student loan debt to deal with
Right.
on top
Right.
of grad school and very little savings. So,
Yeah.
that was really tough. So if people can avoid
Mm-hmm.
going back to school over and over and over and getting into excessive debt, I would love to help them avoid that. And also finding non-traditional ways to get into these professions
Yes.
with less debt, especially for nursing. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't realize you can start with your associate's degree,
Mm-hmm.
become a nurse, and have your employer pay for your bachelor's degree later.
That's true.
Nobody told me that.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
yes. That just happened. A few people at my office did that,
Yeah.
where they were sort of, and even now, going back for nurse practitioner, so yeah, that would have been helpful to know, save some money. Um, and that's why I think it's so great to have, a platform to be able to do that. So I've heard this. So I have heard people say, well, so like the advanced practitioners as a whole include like PAs, NPs, CRNAs. And I've heard a couple of times people say, well, CRNAs are basically NPs, but they do anesthesia. I don't know, right?
I
Like
don't know,
I don't
but
know that
no.
I'm like I don't think so.
I think it's the easiest way for people to understand it and compare it. I think a lot of people not in healthcare are familiar with NPs and PAs because that's the person you're very likely to see at your doctor's office.
Yes. Mhm.
But most people really don't know what happens in the anesthesia world at all. We're not in contact with the general public unless you're having surgery that day.
Right.
So the training is pretty different from nurse practitioner.
Mhm.
So NP school, it's more broad.
Mhm.
You get a little taste of a bunch of different specialties with your rotations.
Mhm.
For nurse anesthesia, it's so anesthesia specific. It's really was designed to be in the days before the MSN programs, before it was a bachelor's degree, before anything, it was really a residency.
Okay.
Nurses would go back and they would go to anesthesia residencies,
Mhm.
and the government would pay them stipends just like physician anesthesia residents.
Okay.
And they would be employed by the hospital and they would get a living stipend and they would work at the hospital and the hospital trained them
Yeah.
just in the same way that physician anesthesiologists are trained. It was later that nursing schools sort of adopted the degree program. So, the clinical hours have been kind of, they've maintained the same level of clinical hours of
Mhm.
time in the operating room and anesthesia training. And then now we have these extra nursing coursework, um, nursing coursework on top of it, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
like we're taking some NP classes, but at the same time, we're doing a lot more clinical time in the operating room than an
Yeah.
NP would normally have. So we're
Yeah.
more specialized and more, I don't want to say more highly trained. I'm not trying to diminish NPs in any way.
No, no, no.
We're focused.
It's just different. Yeah. And I think, I had spoke to Liz Rohr, who's NP, on my earlier podcast, episode 2, I believe. And she said the same thing. She did FNP. So that was really more tailored towards primary care. And,
Exactly.
so the training is just a little bit different. And, being a CRNA, highly specialized, doing procedures, being in anesthesia, monitoring, all of that, it's just different.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I don't know how to say that to like,
It's not better. It's not worse.
right. It's
It's
just
just,
different.
it's just different.
Instead of
So,
looking at like all the different ways that you can plug in to help the patient. You're staying in your lane. It's the anesthesia.
Yes.
I'm in the anesthesia lane.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite part about being a CRNA?
It's going to sound very cheesy, but it's true. I really enjoy just having that ability to build trust with your patients
Mm-hmm.
in the 15 minutes that you meet them before surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They get to choose their doctor, they get to choose their PA or MP, they can Google those people, but they don't get to choose us. Whoever shows up that day is who they're stuck with.
Right.
And most people don't think about that ahead of time. They
Mm-hmm.
research their surgery, they research their surgeon, but surprise, you show up and they don't know who you are at all. And then a look of panic goes over their face. Oh my God. So you have just a few minutes to win them over, gain their trust. And then at the end of the procedure, when they wake up and they're comfortable and they're safe and they're okay and they realize what's going on, they say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh, you helped me so much. Oh, thank God. Thank you.
Yes.
That is like the best feeling. It's like score. Yes.
Yes.
I'm not nauseous. Check. I'm not in pain. Check. I told you.
I told you I could do it.
I just love that like you can form that bond and trust with people in such a short time, and it's such a privilege to take care of them in their most vulnerable state. It's really scary to become unconscious. That's terrifying.
I know. I remember doing my surgery rotation thinking, I hope I never have to have surgery.
Isn't that horrible?
And I was like, this is very vulnerable. Like
Totally vulnerable.
You know, I've had to have colonoscopies because of my ulcerative colitis and things like that. And even that, like just getting the conscious sedation is like a little like, you know, but I've always had great interactions with anesthesia, whether it's a CRNA or an anesthesiologist. They tend to be kind of funny. The one guy stayed with me because I'm a PA, I hate needles on me. So like I have a hard time watching them put IVs in me. And I was like, and the nurse was kind of having a hard time. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, look away. And he was super sweet. He's like, I'm just gonna stand right here. Just look at me right here. Just stay right here. I mean, super nice. But you are in it. And I had to have another where I had to be under general. And it really like you're laying there and you're like, oh my God, I'm basically going to not know what's happening to me for the next however long. I'm kind of freaked out. And so it makes a huge difference to have somebody be like, hey, you know, this is what I'm going to do. This is what it's going to feel like. This is what you're going to have, you know, this is what it's going to happen when you wake up, you know? And so I think you're right. So many people don't even think about that part when
and for us, it's a routine, right? Like
Right.
I do this every day. This is my job. But for you, this is maybe one of the most memorable experiences of your life. And I can make it a positive memory or I could make it a traumatic memory.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can't control the outcome of the surgery. I can't control anything else other than how I care for you and how I make you feel in that moment.
Yeah. What do you feel is the hardest part of it?
I guess, I don't know. That's a good question. You know, it's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of things to juggle. There's a lot of personalities in healthcare in general, but especially in the operating room.
Yes.
And we have a lot of people in the operating room. So it's not one personality, it's like 6 personalities at this time.
Yes.
And then, you know, of course, having to know what exactly do I need to know about this procedure?
Right.
Especially when I cover so many anesthetizing locations.
I was going to say, when you're doing so many different places and procedures.
Every day is totally, it's something I haven't done in a few months. So, you know, in the beginning, I used to keep like notes on my phone, just like little bullet points to remind myself. Now I've been working there for 3 years. It's kind of just like riding a bicycle at this point. But I think really just making sure you have like effective communication. And that's the other reason why I really like having physician anesthesiologists that I work with that I trust. The doctors at my job are excellent. They're all really kind. They're surprisingly, I talked about personalities in the OR. Most of the anesthesiologists I work with are actually really great.
Good.
Like the overwhelm, like 99.99999% of them are absolutely lovely humans. And I do feel like I really trust them and they have my back and we, you know, can talk about it. And they tend to be more specialized too, which is helpful. So like, you know, if we're doing like a craniotomy, a lot of the times you're with an anesthesiologist who specializes in neuro and does them all the time. So if I have a question, I have that person as a resource, which is,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's the hardest part is the juggling and the
Hmm.
dealing with the personalities and kind
Yeah.
of moving around.
It is. It's tricky. I think in any sort of advanced provider position, that's why I like being a PA too. Like even though I have a lot of autonomy, I kind of like having that guy there. Like, do you know? I like the doctors there. I like them there. And not even like physically there, just like reachable.
Yeah, that's
You know?
exactly what it is. 9 times out of 10, especially now that I've been working for 3 years, it's very rare that anyone feels the need to check in on me. Like
Right.
I'm alone during the entire
Yeah.
duration of the procedure. Nobody's coming in to babysit me. But,
Yeah.
if something happens, I like that I can call, you
Yeah.
know, Mike or Chris or Joe or whatever and say,
Yeah.
hey, like get in here. I need you.
Yeah.
I like that I can do that. And it's
I
great.
know.
It makes me feel like I can provide
Yeah.
good care to people.
And same for me. Like I feel like, I don't call them unless it's necessary. So like when I call, they're like, okay, this must be a thing. Like, but it's nice to be able to converse with somebody and just, make sure you're doing the right thing. Cause at the end of the day, it's for the patient's benefit. And that's really great to have that collaboration. That's what I love about being an advanced practice provider, being a PA, is that collaboration, because I'm sure you also work with, great OR nurses and,
Absolutely.
surgeons and things. So, it's so funny because my husband's a surgeon and I'm like, I kind of like drill him. I'm like what he does in the operating room and just like if he's nice to people,
Oh,
all this kind of
better
stuff.
be.
I'm like, you better be nice to those people. So like, I mean, so just kind of tell them, just so people know how many people are in the operating room at one time. You have the CRNA, you have the surgeon, you have probably a resident or a fellow or somebody.
Often, if you're in a teaching hospital, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe both.
Right. And then you have like
You might have a resident, a med student,
yes,
the attending surgeon. Usually, you won't have a fellow and a resident, but sometimes you could.
sometimes. Yeah.
You could have a lot of people in there. Then you have the surgical technologist or
Yes.
scrub nurse. So either or, who the person assisting,
Right.
circulating nurse, like you mentioned. So we're already up to 5 people before anesthesia.
Right.
Me, and
Right.
then possibly a physician anesthesiologist if you work in a care team model. So
Right.
you might have 7 people in there.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Usually it's more like 5.
Yeah.
But you could have more than that. And the patients notice.
Oh
You
yeah.
walk in the room and they say, why are all these people here? Who are all these people?
You're a big deal. You are a big deal. So, what do you feel like would be your area if you were to do research, or what do you feel like you're most passionate about or still feeling it out?
I'm still filling it out. When I was
Yeah.
in school, I did a really amazing rotation where I was an anesthesia student at Fox Chase Cancer Center.
Okay.
And I loved it. I loved the surgeons there. I loved
Mhm.
the patient population. I really enjoyed working with the oncology
Yeah.
surgeons, the procedures themselves, the patients, just
Hmm.
everything about it. I felt like it was very like holistic.
Hmm.
We really took our time to care for people. So I always thought it'd be interesting to do research on, how we can influence outcomes for
Hmm.
cancer patients with anesthesia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research that exists already, like, oh, is this anesthetic going to increase the risk of cancer recurrence? Is this one
Right.
going to do it? But
Hmm.
we don't really know. There's no conclusive evidence
Hmm.
for most of the drugs we give.
Right.
So, we are kind of going by the body of evidence and using our best judgment and hoping that it's the right thing.
Right.
But, what if we do like a huge study and find out, oh my gosh, like we should have been doing all
Yeah.
anesthesia. We can, totally prevent recurrence of cancer in this patient population. Wouldn't that be nice if we knew that for sure?
Yeah.
So that was really my interest for a long time.
Hmm.
I haven't been doing a ton of oncology procedures lately.
Yeah.
So I don't know now if that's what I would still
Yeah.
do, but at the time, that's what spoke to me. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I love oncology, so I love that idea. I think it's super interesting, and there I think, people may not know this, but there are a lot of procedures that get done on patients while under anesthesia in the OR, and,
Yeah.
brachytherapy and peritoneal chemotherapy and, all these things while people are under anesthesia. So that would very interesting area of
These patients
research and
experience
growth.
a lot more anesthesia than a typical
Yeah.
patient without cancer would. So, it would be very interesting to know for sure.
Yeah. So, one last question would be, what would be your number one piece of advice for somebody thinking about becoming a CRNA?
Shadow.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same advice for everyone. But I guess, my main advice would be to really focus on becoming an excellent critical care nurse.
Yeah.
I think that people who are not yet nurses are not aware of how important that truly is. The question I get asked most is, how fast can I become a CRNA? Oh, I can just do 1 year, right? How
Right.
can I apply? And I really want to emphasize, I know right now you just are looking at the end goal and
Mhm.
that's all you can see. But that critical care component, it's everything. It's
Mhm.
the reason why CRNAs are on the front lines in the military giving
Right.
anesthesia in the battlefield. They've been critical care nurses before.
Mhm.
They know how to handle a bleeding patient. They know how to push the drugs and save
Mm.
a life. They can run a code. Those are
Right.
skills that you have to walk in with already. So, you have to be confident in that. You have to be solid in that. So, to really just appreciate
Mhm.
your nursing experience and to stay as long as you need to until you feel comfortable. Don't rush.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I kind of echo your sentiments on that. When we try to rush through things, sometimes that's when, mistakes are made, and, having taking the time to do things right um, makes a difference in your life, in the long run and in your career. So um, I think that's great advice to give, people that are thinking about becoming a CRNA. If you do not follow Chrissy, it is Chrissy Goes Hippie on Instagram
Right.
and Chrissy CRNA on TikTok, right? Okay. And I thank you so much for being here. This was helpful, not only for me, but I'm sure for everybody listening. I think it's a amazing career. We didn't touch on salary, but we have some videos. We have TikTok videos on that as well. And but if you have any questions, as Chrissy said, you can reach out to her. You can reach out to me. But I'm really grateful that you agreed to be here on Beyond the Scope. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.